Hi everyone, welcome to a new tutorial. This time we're going to be creating a new interaction system that is easy scalable, is efficient, is production ready. So we're going to be creating this door here that when we interact with it, it will open, play a sound, close, and the interaction text, everything will be super easy to follow. It will be easy to scale. We'll start with this door, but we'll do some other videos with terminals and some more other complex stuff, but we're going to use the same base. So this is going to be pretty cool, I think. So let's get started. So I already have here a first person template and the level that we're going to use with the assets. This is just to have a start. So we already have the movement and the aiming placed. And we'll start by creating some files. So let's create a new folder called main. So we have everything there. And inside here, we're going to call this interaction. And we're going to start by creating some files. So let's create an interface. Let's call it BPI interaction. We're also going to create the component itself. So we're going to click on blueprint class and actor component. Interaction component. And let's also create the interface, the user interface, which is going to be a user widget. Call it WP interaction. So let's start by opening up the interaction interface, and we're going to be creating some functions here. So let's start with get interaction text. This will be used to get the text that pops on the screen when you are going to interact with an object. This is going to have an output that will be a text type text. We're going to also have a can interact function that will return a boolean. And we'll also have the main interact. This will be called later on when we try to interact with an object. And we also have some optional function that we're going to call on focus change. This will be useful if we want to add some effects when we change the actor. And let's also open up the interaction component and let's start creating the variables. So we have a trace distance, which will have a value of around 100 to 150. We'll also have a trace interval. This is how often the line trace will fire. We'll also have sphere radius. I will explain this on more detail later on. We'll also have the current target, an actor, and we'll also have the widget. Let's call it prompt widget, and this will be interact. Interaction. Let's also have is blocking interaction boolean and the current interaction text. So before we start coding the logic for the component, we're going to create some functions. So we're going to call this trace tick, show prompt, and hide prompt. This will be useful later on. So we'll start by creating the widget. Going to create it just once on the begin play, and then we're going to show it and hide it when we need it. So this way we are not creating and using memory just to make a widget that we know that we're going to use. So the class will be the interaction blueprint. We're going to set the return value to prompt widget, the variable we already created. We're going to have a function here, the show prompt, that is going to get the widget, and we're going to add it to the viewport for now. And then we're going to have hide prompt, which is going to check if it's in viewport. If it's in the viewport, we're going to remove it from the parent. Okay, this is it for now. So let's start with the trace. So here we're going to set a timer. Set timer function name. This will trigger our function trace tick. We're going to set it to looping, and the time will be the interval. So this function here, this make sure that the name matches exactly, will be called infinite times by this interval. So every 0.07 seconds it will be triggered. So let's do the logic for the trace. We're going to do sphere trace by channel. We are not going to be using casting or getting the player, so this is a more efficient way of doing it. And we're going to get the player camera. And now we're going to start setting the values here. So to get the start point, we're going to get the actor location, which will be the camera location, of course. And then we're going to do some math here, vector math, but it's really simple. So we're going to get the forward vector of the actor. We're going to multiply it by distance, and then we're going to add it to the start point. This will give you a line directly from the camera to a forward position, that, and the length will be the trace distance. We're going to connect this to an end. Then we're going to set the radius to a sphere radius, and let's promote this value, the drag debug type, to a variable. I already have it here, so it's easy to control. Let's compile. Let's set this value to duration. And now let's start with the logic for detecting our interaction objects. So let's break the out hit. We're going to get the actor, and we're going to call can interact. Connect it here. So if the object can interact, and also we're going to check if it implements our interface. This is optional, since the call here to interact, as it says here, it will not do anything if the object doesn't implement the interface, but this is just a double check. So if it can interact and it implements the interface, we're going to do our logic, and if not, let's create another variable here, new target, which will be an actor that we're going to use to check if this is the same or a different actor. So if it's not our interaction object, we're going to set new target to an empty object, the current target as well, and we're going to call hide prompt here. Okay. If doesn't fit, if it is not a interactable object, I'm going to do this. And now what we're going to check if the object that we are targeting is interactable. We're going to check if it's the same that we already have. So is the new target equal, or let's do it the other way. If it's not equal to our new object, we're going to do a couple of things. So if our current target, let's do here a sequence so it's easier to track. If our current target is valid, let's call on focus change. Okay. And now what we're going to do here is, now that we know that this is a different object, we're going to set the current target to our new target. Sorry, I forgot here to set the new target. Yes, here. The new target is our hit actor. I'm going to set the current target. Then we are also going to set the interaction text, and we're going to get it from this one, get interaction text. This is going to be our interaction text. And now we're going to call show prompt. Okay. So let's create now the logic to show the prompt. So now that we already have the new text, we're going to set it to the widget. So the widget, of course, is empty for now. So we're going to leave it as is for now. Now let's continue with the widget. I'm going to open up our interaction widget. Let's do a canvas. And let's add a text in the middle. So I'm going to site to content, center, reset these ones, alignment 0.5, so it's right in the middle. Okay. Compile. We're going to go to the graph, and we're going to create a variable. Let's call it, I don't know, action text. This will be a text. Okay. And let's create a function. So just for clarity, set action text. Let's set the action text here. Okay. Okay, now we're going to change this text to, I don't know, F interact. This is just a placeholder, and we're going to click here and create a binding. So we're going to format text, and we're going to do F, and then we're going to call the action text. So let's do some brackets, action text, and let's connect this here. Okay. Let's do a default here, interact, just in case. And let's close this for now. Now let's start with the interesting part. So first, let's try this out. So as you can see here, we can't see anything. We have to open our player blueprint here, and let's add the component, interaction component. Okay. Hit play. We can already see the line trace. So this is what's going to check for object. Remember the logic we already did. So as you can see here, it's already checking for objects. If it collides with a solid object, it will turn green, and then we'll do the check. So we're going to use this level, for example. It's a really cool sci-fi indoor. So we're going to make this door here to be able to move, basically. So it will be like this closed, the player will interact with it, and it will slide to the left, and we can also close it. Okay, so let's go to our main here. Let's create a new folder here, objects, and let's create a blueprint actor, BP door. Okay, and let's just add a static mesh, which will be the door mesh. And since we already have it here, we can Control B and set it here. Okay. And what we are also going to check, so as you can see here, the door is closed, so this will be the initial position, and then we're going to calculate how much it moves. So as you can see here on the right, the Y value is changing, so we're going to use that for moving the door. Okay, so let's go back to our dev level, and here on the BP door, what we're going to do first is going to be adding the interface. So we're going to click on class settings, implemented interfaces, and we'll add the interaction. Okay, let's add a couple of variables here. which will be, of course, is open. Let's also add the open location, which will be a float for now. Yeah, so what we can do now, just to test if this is working, we're going to start overriding the functions. So we have different functions here, can interact. For now, let's just leave it as true. We also have the interact here. Let's do a print. And let's say interacting with door. Okay. Let's also get the interaction text. So basically we're going to select here, and if it's open, we're going to say close door, and if it's closed, open door. Compile and save. Let's leave the onFocus change empty for now. Let's try it out. So we can drag here the door. We can see here that it's already working. We forgot to add the text. Well, let's remove the debug since we know it's already working. So it's saying interact because we didn't connect the text yet. But as you can see here, this part is already working. So here in the component, when we show the prompt, we're going to first do a check if the prompt is in viewport. If it's not in the viewport, because we don't want to add a widget that is already in the screen, if it's not in the viewport, we're going to set the action text to our current action text. Okay? And then we're going to add it to the viewport. Okay, let's try it out now. Open door. Okay. Now that we have that in place, we're going to start with the input. So when the player presses, for example, the F key, we're going to trigger this interaction, and it should print interacting with door. Okay. So here, let's create a new folder called input, and we are going to add a new input action. Let's call it IA interact. We'll leave it as this, and here it will be in your folder. I don't know, you can look for the input mapping. So we're going to add the mapping here, interact, and we're going to set it to F key. Okay. So now let's do the logic for interaction. Let's start by creating a function, an event here, interact. What we're going to do is check if the current target is valid. And Boolean. We're also going to check if it's not blocking interaction. Let's rename this to better represent what it means. Is interaction blocked? So if the interaction is not blocked, Boolean. So if we have a valid object and the interaction is not blocked, we're going to do the logic here, which will be getting the current target and calling interact. Okay. And now we're going to do a quick and optional fix here, because sometimes when we interact with something that changes their text in the middle, like imagine you open a door and while it's opening you need to set the text to close, but since the object is the same, it won't trigger the change. So we're going to do a quick check here and we're going to get the interaction text and check if it's not equal exactly at our current interaction text. So if the text is not the same, we're going to set the interaction text to this new one. So let's set the interaction text to this one, and also let's update the widget. Set action text to this new one. Okay. Interaction logic. Let's comment this. And okay. Now let's connect the input. So I'm going to do this on my player. So in this, you can place it here as well, but I always like to do it on the player because sometimes you don't want to interact if the player is doing something, so it's easier to get it from here. So let's say interact, this one, and we're going to get the interaction component and let's call interact. This one is not the one, it's the function here, interact. Okay, interaction. So let's do a quick summary. We have the player presses the F key, this will be triggered. We're going to go to the component called interact. This will check if the current target is valid, and if it's not blocked, the interaction is not blocked, we're going to get the current target and call its interaction function. In our case, it will be the door, and in the interact event will print on the screen. Then we're going to get the interaction text and do a quick check if it's the correct one. Yeah, that's basically it. So let's try it out. Let me move the door closer to the player so I know how to move. Okay. So you can see here it says open door. The interaction looks good. If we look something else, will change. And if we press the F key, it will say on the left, I don't know if you can see it, interacting with door, interacting with door. Now let's go with the final part, which will be moving the door, of course. We can also try this out and see if the interaction itself is working. So we already have the isOpen and openLocation variables. We're going to, when the user interacts with the door, we're going to do a flip-flop, which basically goes to A and to B, switching between them. So when the user interacted the first time with the door, we're going to set it to open true, and here it will be false. So let's try this one. So it's closed now. We open it, and you can already see that it says closed door. So this is working. If I look the other way, it still says the same, so it's working nicely. But let's do the logic here. So what we need to get is the location. So imagine we already have this door here, and we want to move it, I don't know, to here, 140. This will be setting a variable, so don't worry about it. Let's say to -140, which will be the position. Yeah, this is inverted. The door is like this, so it will be -140. Okay. So if we go to the event graph, we're going to do the logic here. We're going to timeline. We're going to call it TL door open. So when we're opening the door, it will play the timeline. When we are closing it, it will reverse the timeline. I'm going to open it, and let's do 1.5 seconds. Let's add a flow track. Open time, and let's create a key on the 00, and let's create a key on 0.5 and value of 1. Okay. If you're not familiar with timelines, don't worry, this is just enough for now. And what we're going to do here is, on the update, we're going to start moving the door to the left, because if we don't use timeline or anything over time, the door will teletransport basically. So on the update pin, we're going to set the relative location of the door mesh. The location. Let's split this value, since we're only going to update the Y value. And let's do a lerp here that will go from 0 to our open location value, and it will interpolate with this value here. If you're not familiar with lerp, don't worry, this will only get these values from 0 and move it to this one over the time that the timelines has, and it will be updated slowly or over time. So let's try it out. Well, looks like it's working. So let's do some final improvements. For example, I have here some sounds. Let's create a sound queue. Open door and close door, and let's add some sounds. So when we're going to open the door, location, get actor location, let's duplicate this, reverse, here let's set open door, close door. Okay, let's try it out in our map. So have here the level. Let's move the start here, so it's easier to test. What we're going to do is replace this door with our BP door. BP door. Okay. Let's see. That looks good. So have our game here, open door, and let's close it. Maybe we can, so it's easier to open again, we can set it to 120, and let's try there. Yeah, it is easier. So as you can see here, the fix or the quick check that we did on the component to set the text is working fine, because while it's closing it changes the text, and the same with when it's opening. So yeah, that's basically it for now. I will do more tutorials on interactions, and for example I will do one if you're interested in how to open this door, for example with this terminal. So the player will interact with the terminal, a UI will pop up, you can enter a code for example, and the door can unlock. That's something that we can do. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions, and if you like the video and want some more, just leave a like and subscribe, and yeah, see you in the next one.